Rain makes Manhattan honest. It strips the glass of the towers and turns every suit into a wet rag. Linda Harper, 40, immaculate, the kind of woman who could make a room go quiet with a single look, stood in the lobby of a midtown skyscraper while security boxed up her life like it was evidence. Two bankers she'd once called partners watched from the mezzanine, faces blank, eyes already looking past her toward the next transaction. A compliance officer in a pressed shirt read from a folder like he was reciting earnings guidance. Ms. Harper, you are being placed on administrative leave pending investigation into material misstatements connected to the Maple Ridge Special Purpose Vehicle. Linda didn't flinch. That SPV was board approved. Council signed off. The risk committee blessed it. You want to explain to me why we're pretending it's my solo act? The compliance officer's throat bobbed. Our preliminary findings suggest. Suggest, Linda repeated, tasting the word like something stale. That's not evidence. That's narrative. An NYPD detective shifted his weight. Not arresting her. Not yet. But close enough that every phone in the lobby started recording. A junior analyst, fresh haircut, still believing in merit, whispered, "She's the scapegoat," and got elbowed into silence. Across the marble, her managing director, Grant Weller, came down the stairs at a measured pace. Navy overcoat, perfect tie knot, the relaxed posture of a man who had already hedged his exposure. "Linda," he said, soft as a condolence call. "Let's not make a scene." She looked at him like he'd just mispriced a bond in front of her. "We built those structures together." Grant's smile didn't move his eyes. "We built shareholder value. Now the market's repricing risk. That's all." "Risk," Linda said. "You mean blame. You mean optics. You mean you need a human firewall." Grant held up a hand as if coming an investor call. "The street has a short memory. Take the deal. Sign the separation. Let it wash over. Deal." Linda leaned in, low enough that only he would hear. "You're offering me hush money. Call it a settlement. Non-disparagement. Standard. You'll land somewhere." "Somewhere," she echoed. "You mean anywhere that doesn't threaten you?" Grant's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and pocketed it without breaking his calm. "I'm trying to help you." "You're trying to cap your downside," she said. "That's what you do." A flash popped. Someone had posted already. "Linda Harper escorted out, Queen of Structured Finance Falls." The headline wrote itself. Security handed her a plastic bin. Inside, her framed Harvard diploma, a Montblanc pen, a stress ball shaped like a bull, and a glossy brochure from a charity gala she'd never attended but always supported. "Your personal items, ma'am." Linda's thumb brushed the pen. She remembered signing term sheets at 2 a.m., selling certainty to people who could afford to buy it. She'd loved the language, yield, tranche, covenant, haircut, words that turned messy reality into clean math. Now reality had come for her with wet hands. Outside, rain hammered the sidewalk. Midtown cabs flowed by like indifferent blood. Linda stepped under the awning, then out into it anyway, because the cover felt like a lie. Her phone vibrated. One message. "Unknown number asterisk asterisk, don't fight it. You'll only make it worse asterisk." She unlocked, hit her contacts, scrolled to the people who used to answer on the first ring. First call, straight to voicemail. Second, one ring, then dead. Third, this number has been blocked. Linda stared at the screen until the rain blurred it. A cab slowed. She raised her hand. The driver looked at her, Chanel suit clinging, mascara intact, eyes too sharp, and kept going. Maybe he recognized her from the lobby post. Maybe he'd just decided she looked like trouble. Linda tried another. Another passed. She checked her wallet. A black Amex. A platinum card that had gotten her into rooms with velvet ropes and silent judgments. She knew, with the cold clarity of a margin call, that it would decline. Her accounts were frozen. Her access revoked. Her liquidity, the word she'd thrown around like a weapon, had evaporated into procedure. She walked 2 blocks in heels that cost more than her first car, rainwater pooling in the seams. At the corner, she ducked into a bodega, dripping onto a floor mat that read welcome in tired letters. The cashier, a man with a Yankees cap and eyes that had seen every version of desperation, watched her pick up a prepaid Metro card like she was considering a penny stock. "That'll be $5.75, he said. Linda set her card on the counter. The reader beeped once, then again, Mina the second time. Declined. She swallowed, controlled, the way she used to when a client tried to squeeze fees. "Try it again." The cashier shrugged, tried again. Same answer. Behind her, someone sighed loudly. A woman in scrubs with tired shoulders muttered, "Must be nice," like a curse. Linda looked at the Metro card, then at the wet reflection of herself in the plexiglass divider. $5,000 of soot. $0 of cash. Not enough to ride a train. She turned to leave, but her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a threat. It was an email subject line, half-loaded through bad reception. Estate notice, Dorothy May Harper, property, Vermont/Appalachia line. Under it, one sentence previewed like fate. Nearest kin requested to appear. Linda's jaw tightened. Somewhere deep under the concrete and the quarterly thinking, something old stirred, an image of an apple tree behind a sagging porch, hands that smelled like flour, a voice that said, "Honey, money don't keep you warm. People do, *." Outside, the rain kept falling on the glass towers, washing them clean while they stayed the same. Linda stepped back into it, clutching her empty wallet and a plastic bin of trophies, and for the first time in her adult life, she didn't know the next move. And the internet, already hungry, had a front row seat. Linda crossed the state line the way you cross a bad trade, quietly, hoping nobody noticed the red on your hands. A bus dropped her in a town that didn't even pretend to be on the map. The station was a metal shelter with a cracked bench and a bulletin board that advertised 3 things: a church supper, a foreclosed property auction, and an opioid awareness vigil. The air smelled like wood smoke and wet leaves, like somebody was burning last year's hopes behind a trailer. She stood there with her plastic bin, trophies of a life that had just marked to market at 0, and tried to get a ride. No Uber. No Lyft. Just a 2-lane road and pickups that passed like they had better things to do than rescue a woman in a Chanel jacket. A man at the edge of the lot watched her from the cab of a rusted Ford, engine idling like a warning. He had a jaw full of winter and eyes that asked questions without saying a word. "You Dorothy Mays," he finally called out, not friendly, not cruel. Just factual. Linda hesitated. In Manhattan, names were assets. Here, names were history. "I'm her granddaughter," she said. The man's mouth tightened. "Well, ain't that something?" He didn't get out. Didn't offer the passenger door. He nodded toward the bed of the truck like she was a sack of feed. Linda lifted the bin, set it in back, climbed into the passenger seat anyway. The vinyl was cracked. The heater smelled like dust. The radio crackled with a preacher asking for donations. "You got a name?" she asked, because silence in a moving vehicle can turn into judgment. "Earl," he said. Then, after a bit, "Used to be your grandma's neighbor." "Used to be. Used to be," Linda repeated. Earl kept his eyes on the road. "Folks don't like how you left. Folks don't like how you came back." "I didn't come back to," she stopped. "To what?" "To be forgiven. To be crowned prodigal." She wasn't even sure she believed in forgiveness. On Wall Street, you bought your way out with a settlement and called it closure. Earl gave a short laugh. You don't gotta explain yourself to me. I ain't the jury. They drove past shuttered storefronts with some faded signs, hardware, diner, loans, like the town used to be a body and these were the bones. A billboard still promised a better tomorrow with a smiling politician's face peeling at the edges. Linda watched it pass and thought of Grant Weller saying, "The street has a short memory out here." Memory was the only currency that didn't crash. The road narrowed, climbed, then turned into gravel. Trees leaned close like they were listening. Earl pointed with his chin. There. The farmhouse sat back from the road, half hidden by weeds and a slumping fence. The porch sagged like it had been waiting too long. One window was boarded. The roof had a dark scar where shingles had slipped away. Linda's chest tightened, part shame, part something else. She'd pictured the place like a postcard she could keep in a drawer. This wasn't a drawer. This was the whole cabinet falling apart. Earl killed the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. "You got keys?" he asked. Linda patted her pockets, then remembered, her life had been managed by assistants and building access cards. Keys were for people who owned doors. She started. Earl leaned over, popped open the glove compartment, and tossed her a brass key on a faded string. "Dorothy May left it with the county clerk. Said if you ever showed up, you'd need it." Didn't sound hopeful, neither. Linda held the key like it was a verdict. She stepped onto the porch. The wood complained. She slid the key into the lock, turned it. The door stuck, then gave with a tired sigh, like the house was reluctant to let anyone back in. Inside, cold air and old dust. The living room smelled faintly of apples and ash. Furniture sat covered in sheets like ghosts in neutral colors. On the wall, a framed photo, Dorothy May, younger than Linda remembered, holding a pie with both hands like it was a promise. Linda set the plastic bin on the floor. The sound echoed. Earl stayed in the doorway. "Town's gonna want to know what you're doing here." "I'm here because she died," Linda said, sharper than she meant, like she was negotiating against grief. Earl nodded once. "That's the obvious part." Linda turned, annoyed in the way she used to get when someone asked a dumb question in a pitch meeting. "Then what's the not obvious part?" Earl looked at her, really looked, past the wet designer fabric, past the posture that still tried to own the room. "The not obvious part," he said, "is whether you're gonna treat this place like an asset to liquidate, or like a home you owe something to." The word asset landed in her gut. On the bus ride, she'd already run the numbers. Property value. Land comps. Potential sale. She could pay a lawyer, stabilize her cash flow, survive the PR storm until the next firm forgot her name. Liquidate. Redeploy. Regroup. Then she noticed the kitchen. The brick oven sat there like the heart of the house, old, soot-darkened, solid. Beside it, on a hook, hung a flour-dusted apron that had seen 1,000 mornings. And on the counter, under a loose cloth, was a notebook with a frayed spine. Linda crossed the room, lifted the cloth. Handwriting, tight and slanted, filled the first page. Ingredients. Temperatures. Notes in the margin that weren't numbers, little warnings, little kindnesses. Her throat tightened again, and this time it wasn't shame. Behind her, Earl spoke like he was reading a headline he didn't like. "Folks remember your grandma fed when there weren't no jobs. Fed when the mines closed and the bank took their trucks. She didn't ask for nothing back." Linda didn't look up. Her fingers traced the notebook's edge, careful, like it might break. Outside, a car door slammed. Voices. Someone on the porch. A woman's voice, rough with years and anger. "That's her. That the big shot." Linda turned. In the doorway stood 3 locals, work boots, tired eyes, the kind of people Wall Street called labor like it was a cost center. The woman in front held her chin high. You Linda Harper? She asked. Linda met her gaze. Yes. The woman's mouth curled. Well. Dorothy May finally cashed out. And you finally showed up to collect. Linda felt the old instinct rise, the one that turned accusations into leverage. She could out-talk them. Out-logic them. Outlaw them. But the house was quiet. The brick oven didn't care about her resume. She set the notebook down slowly. I'm not here to collect, Linda said. The woman snorted. Honey, that's what everyone says right before they do. And Linda realized, standing in her grandmother's kitchen, that out here she didn't have a brand problem. She had a credibility problem. One she couldn't hedge. Linda didn't sleep so much as she negotiated with the dark. The house creaked like an old man clearing his throat. Wind pushed at the boards on the window, making them knock in a steady rhythm that felt like a bill collector. At 4 in the morning she gave up, pulled on the flannel shirt she'd found in a drawer, Dorothy May's, softened by time, and went to the kitchen. The brick oven sat cold, a square of stubborn history. Linda ran her palm over the soot-blackened lip. In New York, it came from hidden systems, boilers, vents, infrastructure you never thanked. Here, it had to be coaxed, fed, and... She opened the notebook again. The first recipe was labeled in pencil, apple pie, for hard times. No glossy measurements. No corporate precision. Just enough flour to feel right, and butter till it shines, and don't rush what ain't meant to be rushed. Linda's mouth tightened. Unbankable, she murmured to nobody. Completely non-auditable. She'd spent a career turning messy human behavior into clean models. She'd priced risk like it was a weather report. And now she was staring at a recipe that refused to be quantified. That made her angry. So she did what she always did when the world wouldn't behave, she tried to force it into a spreadsheet. By 8, she'd driven awestruck, after finding the keys on the same hook as the apron, to the only grocery store within 20 miles. She bought the cheapest apples on discount, a sack of flour, margarine instead of butter, corn syrup labeled pancake topping, and pre-made crust sheets that promised home-style taste in bold print. At the register, the cashier, a teenage boy with a hunting cap and a look that said he'd already heard about her, scanned her items like he was doing her a favor. You making a pie? He asked, voice flat. Testing a product, Linda said. He blinked. It's pie. It's margin, Linda corrected without thinking. The boy's mouth twitched like he wanted to laugh but didn't want to get in trouble. Good luck, he said, which in that tone sounded a lot like good luck, lady. Back at the farmhouse, Linda set up the kitchen like a trading desk. She pulled the old scale from a cabinet, calibrated it with coins, then set her phone on a stand to time everything to the second. She measured flour in grams. She calculated cost per slice. She penciled in labor hours with a cold, efficient hand, like Dorothy May's kitchen was a business unit. She worked fast, too fast, rolling dough with the impatience of someone used to closing deals before lunch. She swapped butter for margarine, told herself nobody would know. She poured the corn syrup like it was liquidity. When the oven finally warmed, she slid the pie in with a tight satisfaction. Optimize, she whispered. 30 minutes later, the kitchen smelled fine. Sweet, warm, vaguely comforting. Linda took that as validation. Her whole career had been built on a close enough dressed-up certainty. She pulled the pie out. The crust looked pale, edges already cracking. She pressed a finger lightly to the surface and felt it flake apart like dry paper. A knock hit the front door. Linda froze. She wasn't ready for witnesses. The knock came again, followed by a voice she recognized from the porch the day before, the woman who'd called her a collector. Linda Harper, the voice said. You in there? Linda set the pie on the counter and opened the door. The woman stood with her arms folded, a paper bag in one hand. Up close, she was mid-50s, hair pulled back tight, cheeks weathered by worry and winter. "Name's Mavis," she said. "You're in my grandma's house, so I figured I oughta see if you're alive or just hiding. "I'm alive," Linda said. "Barely." Mavis's eyes cut past Linda into the kitchen. "Smells like you're trying to bake." Linda's chin lifted by reflex. "I'm capable of following instructions." Dorothy May didn't have instructions. She had feel. Mavis stepped inside without waiting to be invited, like she had every right. "Where'd you get them apples?" "The store," Linda said. Mavis nodded. "Those are the sad apples. Those are for applesauce when you don't got teeth." "They were economical," Linda shot back. "Economical," Mavis repeated, tasting the word like a foreign spice. "That's how you talk in New York. Like everything's a ledger." Linda felt heat rise in her face. "That's how you survive." Mavis set the paper bag on the table. Dorothy May survived. Without talking, like a bank. Linda pointed at the pie on the counter like it was a closing argument. "I made this. It's a pie. It will taste like pie." Mavis walked over, picked up a knife, and cut a slice cleanly. The crust cracked in a jagged line, splitting away from the filling like it wanted out. Mavis didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just looked at the slice with a kind of tired disappointment, like she'd expected better from a grown woman. Linda's voice went sharper. "It's structurally unsound because the oven temperature." "Baby," Mavis interrupted, "and it wasn't kind. That pie ain't broke 'cause of temperature. It's broke 'cause you don't respect it." Linda stared. "Respect is not an ingredient." Mavis lifted the slice, took a bite, chewed slowly. Her face didn't change at first. Then her jaw tightened. "This tastes like somebody trying to fake their own accent," she said. "Looks right from a distance. Up close, it's all wrong." Linda felt the words land hard. Her instinct screamed to counter, to litigate, to turn humiliation into dominance. But the kitchen, Dorothy May's kitchen, didn't care about dominance. Mavis set the fork down. "You know why folks ain't welcoming you? It ain't 'cause you left. It's 'cause you came back acting like you can buy your way into what you never bothered to learn." Linda's throat tightened. She wanted to say, "I didn't come back for you." She wanted to say, "This is temporary." Instead, the only honest thing in the room slipped out. "I don't know how to do it," Linda said, low. Not the way she did. Mavis studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into the paper bag and pulled out a jar, dark, thick, almost amber. "Apple molasses," she said. "Dorothy May's last batch she made before her hands got too shaky." Linda looked at it like it was contraband. "That's not in the store." "No," Mavis said. "It takes time. Takes patience. Takes sitting with it when you'd rather run." Linda swallowed. "Why are you giving it to me?" Mavis shrugged, but her eyes softened just a fraction. "'Cause I loved her. And she'd haunt me if I let you ruin her pie without at least giving you a chance." Linda took the jar. It was warm from the bag, like it had been held close. Mavis turned toward the door. "Don't waste it," she said. "And don't you dare try to optimize it." After she left, Linda stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the cracked crust, the cheap ingredients, the perfect measurements that had produced something hollow. On Wall Street, you could make a lot of money selling hollow things. Out here, hollow just meant you hadn't made anything at all. Linda treated the jar like evidence. She set it on the counter and stared at it as if it might confess to something. Apple molasses. Not corn syrup. Not a pancake topping. A substance that looked like it had been pulled out of the ground and walked over by stubborn hands until it became sweetness. In Manhattan, sweetness came in packets. She twisted the lid. It resisted, then gave with a soft pop. The scent rose immediately, deep apple, smoke, a hint of bitterness like a memory you couldn't polish away. Linda dipped a spoon in, lifted it, watched it fall in a slow ribbon. Time, she thought. It literally moved slower. The notebook lay open beside it, Dorothy May's handwriting slanting across the page. Linda found the line Mavis had pointed at years ago without ever saying it out loud. Molasses takes 2 days. Don't cheat it. Cheating shows. Linda exhaled hard, almost a laugh. You've got to be kidding me. 2 days. 48 hours of doing something that produced no immediate output, no measurable progress, no win she could report to anybody. On Wall Street, if you couldn't show momentum by lunch, you were already behind. She looked around the kitchen. It was small, worn, honest. The kind of place that made her expensive phone look ridiculous. Her hands hovered over the jar again. Then she heard Earl struck out front. He came in without knocking, Appalachia didn't do ceremony, and stopped when he saw the jar. Mavis brought you that, he said. Linda didn't ask how he knew. Towns like this ran on information faster than Bloomberg. She said it was the last batch, Linda replied. Earl nodded once, like that meant something more than food. It does. I can't replicate it, Linda said. The words came out blunt, almost irritated. There are no proportions. No controls. No way to backtest. Earl leaned on the doorway, arms crossed. Dorothy May didn't backtest nothing. She cooked. Same way she lived. Linda lifted the spoon, let the molasses drip. 2 days, she said. For one ingredient. Earl's gaze didn't move. That's the point. Linda hated that he was right. She hated that a brick oven and a jar of syrup were forcing her into a pace she couldn't dominate. Still, something in her had shifted since the bodega, since the decline card, since the first time she'd had to feel what it was like to not be able to buy her way through a moment. She turned to the pantry, pulled out apples, this time the better ones Mavis had left in a basket by the back door, bruised but fragrant. She set them on the cutting board, picked up a knife, and paused. Her hands were good at signatures, at swift calculations, at slicing people's arguments into manageable chunks. But peeling an apple required a different kind of control, the kind that wasn't about speed, but about not wasting what you held. She began slowly. The peel came off in uneven strips at first, snapping when she rushed. Linda forced herself to ease up, to let the blade glide. A long ribbon of peel finally fell in one piece, curling like a question mark on the board. She didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until she exhaled. Hours passed. The house warmed. A pot simmered. Linda followed Dorothy May's notes like they were a map: reduce apple cider down, stir when it threatens to scorch, skim what rises, don't walk away just because your feet get restless. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, 3 notifications, then 5. She didn't look. The device felt like an old addiction, a dealer in false urgency. Earl watched her from the table, sipping coffee that tasted like charcoal and comfort. You always move like you're chasing something, he said. Linda kept stirring. In New York, if you stop moving, someone takes your seat. That seat worth what it cost you? Earl asked. Linda's jaw tightened. It used to be. The pot burped softly. Steam fogged the window. Linda stirred again, slower. The smell deepened, turned from bright apple to something darker and more complex. Earl nodded toward the notebook. Your grandma wrote in there when she was mad. When she was scared. When she didn't know if the lights would stay on. Linda glanced at the pages, the smudges where flour met ink. She never told me. She didn't talk much about hard things, Earl said. She just fed them. That was her language. Linda's throat tightened at an unexpected memory, Dorothy May pressing a warm slice of pie into her hands as a kid, saying, *it. Don't ask questions with an empty mouth, *. Linda had thought it was just grandmother talk. Now it sounded like strategy. The pot thickened. The liquid became syrupy, glossy. Linda lifted the spoon, it coated the metal and fell in a slow, deliberate stream, like the jar. She felt a ridiculous surge of satisfaction, not the sharp hit of winning a deal, but something steadier. Something and. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Al stood, walked to the oven, opened the iron door. Inside was a bed of coals from earlier, still alive. He grabbed a piece of wood, placed it carefully, closed the door. You gonna make another pie? He asked. Linda looked at the cheap, cracked disaster still sitting on the counter like a warning. Yes, she said. But not like that. She pulled butter from the fridge, real butter this time, no shortcuts, and set flour in a bowl. She didn't measure immediately. She ran her fingers through it, felt the texture, listened to the soft whisper it made. Her hands moved differently now. Less like a machine. More like someone learning a language her body remembered even if her mind had forgotten. As she walked, Earl's phone rang. He answered, listened a moment, then glanced at Linda with a look that was half sympathy, half "I told you so." That health inspector's asking about you, he said. Linda didn't stop kneading. Already? Earl's mouth tightened. Town don't trust easy. And you're, well. He gestured vaguely at her, at the idea of her. Linda pressed the dough, felt it give. Let him ask, she said. I'm not selling anything yet. Earl's eyes held hers. You're making food in a place that's been through hell. Folks got rules. Folks got fear. Linda nodded once, because for the first time she understood that rules weren't always oppression. Sometimes they were what kept a community from being poisoned by bad meat, bad deals, bad people promising miracles. She slid the dough into a cloth to rest and wiped her hands on Dorothy May's apron. Then she looked at the jar again, at the slow sweetness that refused to be rushed, and felt the first real shift inside her. Not redemption. Not a movie moment. Just a small, stubborn willingness to stay put long enough to become someone she could live with. The health inspector showed up like a bank audit, no drama, just paperwork and the quiet certainty that if you were dirty, he'd find it. His county sedan rolled up the gravel drive at 9 a.m., tires crunching like teeth. Linda was in the kitchen, hair tied back, Dorothy May's apron on, hands dusted with flour. The new pie cooled on the counter, crust browned the way it should be, steady, not showy. I'll open the door before the knock. Carl, he said, like the name tasted old. Calvin Rock stepped inside with a clipboard and a cooler-sized testing kit. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, eyes sharp in that bureaucratic way that could ruin your week without raising his voice. He looked at Linda and didn't bother hiding recognition. Well, Carl said. Wall Street finally washed up on our shore. Linda didn't smile. Morning, Calvin. His eyebrows lifted. You remember me? I remember you wanted out, Linda said. I remember you got out. Carl's jaw worked. I got out because folks like you treated this place like a punchline. Linda held his gaze. And you think I'm here to punch down again? Carl's pen clicked. I think you're here because the city spit you out, and now you're looking for a new angle. And I think food made by a disgraced financier in an unlicensed home kitchen is exactly how people end up sick. The words were blunt enough to make Earl shift. Linda stayed still. This was familiar terrain, hostile counterparts, uneven power, public consequences. Let's keep it factual, she said. You're here to check compliance, not to write my biography. Carl's mouth twitched. Facts are my favorite. He walked the kitchen like it was a crime scene. Check the sink. The counters. The fridge temperature. He opened cabinets, noted the flour stored in sealed containers, the labeled jars, the hairnet Linda wore even though it made her feel ridiculous. Where's your permit? He asked. I don't have one, Linda said. I'm not selling yet. Carl scribbled. You're preparing food for distribution. I'm baking, Linda said. In my grandmother's oven. Carl snapped his eyes to her. The law don't care about your oven's history. Cottage food rules exist for a reason. Linda wiped her hands slowly. Then tell me the route. Carl paused. Route. Permitting, Linda said. If I wanted to do this legally, how would I do it? Carl's gaze narrowed. You suddenly care about legal. Linda didn't flinch. I care about not poisoning people. That landed, just slightly. Carl exhaled through his nose. You'd need to use an approved facility, he said. Certified kitchen. Inspections. Training. Labels. All of it. There is no approved facility in town, I'll cut in. The old church kitchen got shut down. School cafeterias locked up half the year. Carl's pen tapped his clipboard. Not my problem. Linda stepped closer, voice calm, almost conversational. It is your problem if your job is public health and the reality is a food desert. Carl looked up sharply. Don't lecture me. I'm the one who does the job. Linda nodded once. Then do it. With the constraints you actually have. Not the ones you wish you had. Carl's eyes hardened. You trying to bully me? No, Linda said. I'm trying to structure a solution. She reached for a folded newspaper on the table. Al had brought it in earlier. A headline about the town council deadlocking over a budget shortfall. Another about the community center closing. You're losing the only communal kitchen space you could refurbish, Linda said. Because nobody can get past politics. Carl scoffed. That's council business. Linda's tone stayed level. And council business becomes your business when people start cooking in unsafe places because they have nowhere else to go. Carl stared, silent, the way a regulator goes quiet right before asking the question that matters. Linda continued. I can help them fix the budget. Not with charity. With math. With leverage. We build a plan that keeps the community center open, upgrades the kitchen to code, and creates oversight you can stand behind. Carl's pen stopped. You got no money, he said. That's the rumor. I have skills, Linda replied. I can negotiate. I can find grants. I can restructure debt. I can translate this town into language funders understand without selling it off to the highest bidder. Carl leaned in, voice low. And what do you get? Linda didn't answer immediately. She looked at the pie, real butter, real molasses, real time. A legal place to bake, she said. And a chance to prove I'm not just taking. Carl held her gaze like it was a stress test. Finally, he clicked his pen and wrote something on the form. I'm shutting this down for now, he said. No sales. No distribution. Not one slice out that door. Linda nodded. Fair. Carl's eyes stayed hard, but his voice shifted, barely. You show up at the council meeting tonight, he said. You talk numbers. You talk in plain English. And if you make a fool of them, you're done here. Linda's mouth tightened into something close to a smile. I've made fools of richer men. Carl headed for the door, then stopped. One more thing, he said without turning. This ain't Manhattan. Folks here don't forgive a balance sheet. Linda watched him leave. The gravel crunched again, fading. Al exhaled. You just offered to fix a whole town's finances for a kitchen. Linda looked down at her flour-dusted hands. On Wall Street, she said, we call it a swap. The council meeting didn't end in applause. It ended in stunned silence, the kind you get after a bad earnings call when the room realizes the numbers were real all along. Linda walked out into the cold night with a legal pad full of figures and a town full of faces that still didn't like her, but couldn't quite dismiss her anymore. She'd shown them the burn rate of their community center, the hidden fees in the county contract, the debt service that was bleeding them slow. She didn't shame them. She didn't flatter them. She just laid it out like a term sheet. This isn't politics, she'd said. It's cash flow. You can argue values all day, but the math will repossess you in the end. Half the room hated her tone. The other half hated that she was right. By the time she got back to the farmhouse, the wind had teeth. Earl's truck sat in the drive like a tired watchdog. Inside, the brick oven was dark. Linda tried to light it anyway. The damper lever stuck, then snapped back with a metallic clack that didn't sound right. She crouched, peered into the throat of it, and saw the problem. A small piece of the old mechanism, some springy little connector, had finally given up after decades of heat and soot. In Manhattan, she would have called someone. Out here, you either fixed it or you went cold. She tried a hardware store in town the next morning. It was open, but barely, one aisle of screws, one shelf of outdated light bulbs, and a man behind the counter who looked like he'd been standing there since Reagan. You got anything like this? Linda held up the small bent piece of metal. He squinted. That's old. Like, old. I don't need new, Linda said. I need functional. He shook his head. Ain't got it. Might try online. Linda almost laughed. Online? With what money? With what shipping? With what timeline? People were counting on that kitchen plan. She was counting on the oven. Back at the farmhouse, she stared at the broken piece like it was a default notice. Then her eyes landed on the Rolex. It sat in her plastic bin, heavy and smug. A luxury watch Grant had given her the year she hit 8 figures in revenue, like time itself had become her employee. She hadn't worn it since the day everything fell apart, but she'd kept it because part of her still believed in the old symbols. She lifted it. The weight felt obscene in her palm. Earl came into the kitchen and paused. That thing worth a lot. On paper, Linda said. Earl nodded toward the dead oven. Paper don't bake nothing. Linda didn't answer. She turned the watch over, studying it like she used to study a balance sheet, looking for the one component that could change the whole outcome. Inside the Rolex, behind the polished face, were tiny parts built to last. Springs. Pins. A small, stubborn piece of metal designed to survive motion. Linda set her phone on the counter, hit record without thinking, maybe out of habit, maybe because she'd spent her life documenting results for people who didn't trust stories. The camera caught her hands. The flour on her knuckles. The quiet in the room. This watch, she said, voice steady, used to make me feel like I own time. She held it up to the lens. But time doesn't care what you wear. Earl shifted in the background. Linda. She glanced at him. If I'm gonna live here, she said, I can't keep worshipping dead things. She took a hammer from the drawer, a dirty mace, one smooth, and brought it down once. The sound was sharp, final. Glass cracked. Metal bent. Something inside gave with a tiny, expensive snap. Earl winced like she'd hit a nerve. Linda pried the back open carefully, not graceful, but focused. She extracted a small springy component, held it between finger and thumb. It was almost nothing. It was enough. She walked to the oven, knelt, and fit the piece into the old mechanism the way you'd slot a missing clause into a contract. The lever moved. The damper opened clean. She exhaled, one breath she didn't know she'd been holding for years. Back at the counter, she looked into the phone again. I spent half my life counting money for people who already had too much, she said. Now I'm trying to make something for folks who've been told they don't deserve warm food. She turned the camera slightly, letting it catch the farmhouse kitchen, the battered notebook, the brick oven waking up. And yeah, she added, quieter, I'm the villain in somebody's story. Maybe I end that. She ended the recording and forgot about it. But Earl's nephew, who'd been helping with the community center cleanup, saw it later when Linda handed him the phone to call a contractor. He watched the clip twice, jaw tight, then uploaded it with a caption that wasn't polished and didn't need to be. Wall Street lady smashed her Rolex to fix dirty maize oven. Say what you want, but that was real. By nightfall, it wasn't the Wall Street lady anymore. It was everywhere. Millions of views. Comment was. People calling her a fraud, a hero, a class traitor, a cloud chaser, a repentant shark, a performance artist. And in the middle of the noise, one truth kept rising like heat from brick. You could break a luxury symbol in public. But could you build something that actually fed people when the cameras were gone? The first woman Linda hired didn't trust her. Her name was June Holloway. 48. 2 kids grown and gone. Laid off from the textile plant when the last line shut down and the machines were hauled away like bodies. She showed up to the community center kitchen with her arms crossed and a look that said she'd been disappointed professionally before. You pay in cash or promises? June asked, standing just inside the door. Linda didn't look up from the stainless table she was wiping down. Equity, she said. June backed a laugh. That ain't money. It can be, Linda replied. If it's structured right. June stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You say that like it's a spell. Linda finally met her gaze. I say it like it's protection. The kitchen smelled like bleach and fresh paint. The town had approved the provisional reopening after Linda rewired the budget, cut waste, renegotiated vendor contracts, locked in a small rural development grant with language tight enough to keep predatory buyers out. It wasn't charity. It was containment. She pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. June flipped it open. Frowned. What's this? An operating agreement, Linda said. Worker-owned cooperative. Everyone who works here earns shares. One person, one vote. No silent investors. No outside control. June's eyes scanned the page, lips moving slightly as she read. And you? I get a share like everyone else, Linda said. No preferred class. No golden parachute. June looked up sharp. You expect folks to believe that? I expect folks to read, Linda replied. And ask questions. And walk if they don't like the answers. June closed the folder slowly. You know how many people come through here talking about saving us? Linda nodded. I was one of them. Just from a nicer building. That landed. By the end of the week, there were 6 women in the kitchen. All over 40. All carrying quiet damage. Linda didn't call them employees. She called them members. She taught them the recipe the way Dorothy May had written it, no shortcuts, no substitutions unless everyone agreed. She also taught them things she'd learned the hard way, how to read contracts, how to spot buried fees, how to say no to money that came with teeth. This clause, she said one afternoon, pointing at a sample term sheet from a regional distributor, lets them buy you out the second you succeed. June squinted. But it says strategic partnership. Linda smiled thinly. That's what they call a leash. The women learn fast. Faster than Linda expected. They asked hard questions. They argued. They voted against her twice in the first month. She didn't override them. That alone started to change how people talked. The business grew sideways, not up. Local first. Churches, schools, county events. No glossy branding. Just a stamped label with a simple line, Dorothy May Cooperative, apple pie for hard times. Then the land letters started coming. Offers to unlock value. Proposals to optimize underutilized acreage. Polite envelopes that hid sharp intent. Linda recognized the language immediately. Asset stripping in Sunday clothes. She gathered the members one evening and laid the letters out. They want the land, June said flatly. Always do. Linda nodded. And if they get it, this ends. Not today. Not tomorrow. But eventually. So what do we do? Another woman asked. Linda didn't answer right away. She looked around the table, at flour-stained hands, at faces that had learned not to expect fairness. We put the land in a trust, she said. Collective ownership. Restrictive covenants. No sale without unanimous consent. June whistled low. That legal. It is if it's done right, Linda said. And I know how to do it right. They voted. Unanimous. Word spread, not fast, but deep. This wasn't a charity case. It wasn't a comeback tour. It was a structure that made sense to people who'd been burned by structures their whole lives. Linda still slept badly. Still woke up thinking in risk scenarios. But now, when she walked into the kitchen and saw women arguing over crust thickness like it mattered, because it did, something in her recalibrated. On Wall Street, she chased individual upside until it hollowed her out. Here, the upside was shared. And for the first time, that felt less like a sacrifice. And more like compound interest she could finally believe in. The lawsuit arrived the way predators always do, quiet, polished, and certain you wouldn't bite back. A courier SUV rode into town, not dusted like the local trucks, but clean in a way that announced money. The man who stepped out wore boots that had never known mud. He asked for Linda by full name, middle initial included, like it was already on a filing. She took the envelope with steady hands. Inside, federal letterhead. A complaint filed in the Southern District of New York. Her old firm, Maple and How Capital, listed as plaintiff. Linda Harper, defendant. Non-compete agreement. Trade secrets. Unjust enrichment. She read it standing in the parking lot of the community center, the wind worrying the edges of the paper. They were claiming the pie. Not the physical pies. The idea of them. The brand narrative. The commercial exploitation of proprietary research she had allegedly conducted while under their employ. Linda let out a short breath. Of course you are. June came up beside her. That look usually means trouble. Linda handed her the papers. June read slowly, brow furrowed. They say you stole from M. They say a lot of things, Linda replied. That's their business model. Inside, Linda's mind moved fast. Jurisdiction. Venue. Choice of law. The non-compete was aggressive but not unusual, designed to intimidate, not necessarily to win. But intimidation worked best on people who couldn't afford a fight. The firm was betting she'd fold. Take a settlement. Walk away quietly. Leave the town holding a story instead of a future. June looked up. What happens if they win? They could shut us down, Linda said. Force us to rebrand. Drain us with legal fees until there's nothing left. And if you settle, another woman asked. Linda didn't answer right away. She stared at the parking lot, at the women unloading apples from the back of a pickup, laughing about something small and private. If I settle, she said finally, they pay me. A lot. I walk away clean. This place becomes vulnerable. June's jaw set. They buy you off. Yes, Linda said. Cleanly. Legally. Like it never happened. Silence settled, heavy as though before it rises. You gonna do it? June asked. Linda closed her eyes for a bit. In another life, the answer would have been automatic. Cash out. The risk. Preserve optionality. She'd preached it to clients like gospel. But this wasn't a portfolio. These weren't assets on a screen. These were people who had voted to trust her with something that couldn't be hedged. I can fight, Linda said. But I won't lie to you. It won't be pretty. And I won't use some shark lawyer who bills by the inhale. June crossed her arms. You fought sharks your whole life. Yes, Linda said. On their turf. With their weapons. And look where that got me. She met June's eyes. If we do this, we do it here. Out in the open. With what we actually have. Word traveled faster than Linda expected. The local paper ran the headline, Wall Street sues Appalachia Bakery. Online, the story metastasized. Commentators took sides. Some called her a hypocrite who'd finally found a profitable costume. Others called it corporate bullying with a familiar scent. Maple and House PR machine spun hard. Anonymous sources claimed Linda had been developing the concept on farm time. That she'd monetized a personal redemption arc. Linda read every word, jaw tight, because knowing your enemy's narrative was half the battle. That night, she sat alone in Dorothy May's kitchen with the notebook open. The last page held a line she'd never noticed before, written smaller, like it was meant to be found late. If they try to own it, feed it to someone who can't pay. Linda smiled, sad and real. The next morning, she called the clerk of court. I represent myself, she said. The woman on the line paused. Ma'am, are you an attorney? No, Linda replied. But I understand contracts better than most of the people who wrote this one. She hung up and turned to the women gathered behind her. They're coming for us, she said. Not because of the pie. Because of the example. June nodded slowly. Then we don't back down. Linda exhaled. No, she said. We show them what they can't own. Outside, the apple tree stood bare against the sky, roots deep, branches patient. Maple and Howe had money. Linda had time. And this time, she wasn't trading it away. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and old power. It wasn't New York marble and glass, no skyline, no hush-hush elevators, but it had its own gravity. Flags, portraits, sealed doors. A place built to remind you that rules outlast feelings. Linda walked in with a cardboard pie box in her hands. No entourage. No high-priced counsel. Just a simple navy coat and the calm face she used to wear in boardrooms when someone tried to corner her. June and two of the co-op members sat behind her in the gallery, shoulders squared like they were bracing for weather. Earl sat farther back, hat in his lap, eyes fixed on Linda like he was measuring whether she'd keep her word. Across the aisle, Maple and Howe's legal team looked like a catalogue, two associates with matching haircuts, a senior partner with a briefcase that probably had its own insurance policy. They didn't look at Linda's face. They looked at the pie box. The senior partner leaned to one associate and murmured something that made them smile. Performance. Cute. The judge entered, Judge Harlan Pierce, late 60s, a man whose patience had been sanded down by decades of people trying to game him. He glanced at the docket, then up at Linda. Ms. Harper, he said. You're appearing pro se. Yes, Your Honor. And you've brought, he paused, eyes flicking to the box. Food. Linda's voice stayed even. An exhibit. A small ripple moved through the room, half laughter, half disbelief. Maple and Howe's partner stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff objects to theatrics. This is a trade secret and non-compete dispute, not a cooking show. Judge Pierce's mouth didn't move much, but his eyes sharpened. Sit down, counsel. I'll decide what's theatrical. He turned to Linda. Proceed. Linda placed the pie box on the table gently, like setting down a fragile truth. She didn't open it yet. Your Honor, she began, the plaintiff's argument depends on one premise, that anything I touch while employed by Maple and How can be claimed as theirs, regardless of where it came from. She held up Dorothy May's notebook in a clear plastic sleeve. This is my grandmother's handwritten recipe journal. It predates my employment by decades. It is not a corporate asset. It is not a trade secret. It's a family artifact, also, frankly, a regional one. The senior partner scoffed softly. Objection. Foundation. Authenticity. Linda didn't blink. I have witnesses prepared to attest to its provenance and long-standing community use, including the county clerk who held the key to the farmhouse, and multiple residents who ate this pie before I ever set foot on a trading floor. Judge Pierce nodded slowly. Noted. Linda continued. As for the non-compete, Maple and How was an investment firm. I was employed as a structured finance executive. I did not bake pies for the firm. I did not sell baked goods to the firm. There is no competitive overlap. The partner rose again. Your Honor, our public persona is not a market, Judge Pierce snapped. It's a nuisance. A laugh escaped somewhere in the back. The bailiff gave a look that shut it down. Linda let the moment pass, then spoke again. This case is a textbook attempt at litigation as leverage. They don't need to win. They need to drain us until we can't operate. June shifted behind her, breathing hard through her nose like a bull held at the gate. Linda reached the part that mattered. She slid a single page from the notebook into view, Dorothy May's last line, written near the spine. Your Honor, she said, this is the end of the recipe. My grandmother wrote, asterisk, only good when shared with somebody who's got nothing to give you back. Asterisk. She paused, then added, that sentence is the opposite of proprietary intent. It is an explicit rejection of ownership as the primary value. The plaintiff's partner's face tightened. This is sentimental nonsense. Linda turned to him, eyes sharp. Sentiment doesn't invalidate facts. It explains motive. Judge Pierce leaned forward slightly. Ms. Harper, he said, what exactly are you asking this court to do? Linda opened the pie box. Warm air rose. The smell filled the room, apple, butter, smoke, something older than litigation. She didn't pass it around. She didn't offer a bite. She simply let it exist. I'm asking the court, she said, to recognize the difference between a trade secret and a tradition. Between an employment contract and a community inheritance. She closed the box again. And I'm asking, Linda added, voice quieter, that we stop pretending everything good in America can be monetized, trademarked, and held hostage. The judge sat back, expression unreadable. Then he spoke, slowly, like he was choosing words that would outlast the room. The law protects innovation, Judge Pierce said. It does not protect greed dressed as innovation. Maple and House partner stiffened. Judge Pierce looked down at his notes. I am not issuing a final ruling today. But I will say this, the plaintiff has a high bar to clear if they want this court to declare a grandmother's pie a corporate asset. He glanced at Linda. Ms. Harper, you file your response. Properly. On time. Yes, Your Honor. As the gavel fell, the room exhaled. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. People shouted questions. Someone called her a fraud. Someone else called her brave. Linda didn't answer. She just held the pie box tighter, feeling the absurd weight of it, how something so ordinary could become a battlefield. And how, in the middle of all that noise, the real verdict would be decided by what she did next, when nobody was watching. Winter let go slowly, like it wanted payment before it left. By early April the mud came back, softening the gravel road and the old fence post. The apple trees pushed out buds the color of new pennies. In the mornings, the valley smelled like thawing earth and wood smoke and the kind of work that didn't look good on social media. The court fight didn't end with a single heroic sentence. It ended the way real things end: paperwork, deadlines, motions, and a judge who didn't appreciate corporate bullying dressed up as protecting shareholders. Maple and Har didn't win outright. They couldn't. Not without turning themselves into the villain in public record. So they did what they always did when the trade moved against them. They took the off-ramp. A settlement offer arrived with careful language, mutual non-disparagement, no admission of wrongdoing, and a payout big enough to reset Linda's whole life. Enough to buy her reputation back in Manhattan with a few lunches and a new LinkedIn headline. June read it twice, then looked up. "This is go away money." Linda nodded. "It's hush money with a bow." "And if you sign?" June asked. Linda stared at the amount, feeling the old reflex twitch in her chest, the part of her trained to grab liquidity when it appeared. She could pay debts. She could stop sleeping like she was being chased. She could become unsafe again. She folded the letter and set it down. "If I sign," she said, "it tells them they can sue any small town into silence. It tells them this place is a stepping stone, not a home." Earl, sitting at the end of the table, grunted. "And if you don't sign?" Linda met his eyes. "We keep fighting. We keep burning time." June leaned back, quiet. "Time's what they think we don't have." Linda smiled, thin, but real. "They're used to people who can't afford patience." The co-op voted, like they always did. No speeches, no drama. Just hands raised. They rejected the settlement. Maple and Har withdrew 2 months later, filing a voluntary dismissal without prejudice to save face. Linda knew what it meant: they could try again if the wind shifted. But the message was clear: this case wasn't worth the reputational blood loss. The town didn't throw a parade. They didn't suddenly love Linda. Appalachia didn't do easy absolution. What they did do was show up. They showed up to peel apples, to scrape trays, to patch the roof on the community center, to bring in bags of flour when the distributor's truck got stuck in mud. They showed up the way people show up when they've decided something is theirs, even if it was built by someone they once didn't trust. On a bright Sunday afternoon, Linda stood at the edge of the orchard behind the farmhouse. She wore Dorothy May's old denim shirt, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back the way it always ended up now: practical, unglamorous, honest. In her hands was a fresh pie, still hot enough to fuck the plastic wrap. She thought happiness would feel louder. In Manhattan, happiness had always been a number: bonus season, deal size, net worth, something you could point at and say, asterisk there. That proves it, asterisk. Here, it was quieter. It was the steady rhythm of people working without needing to be impressed. It was a kitchen that stayed open because everyone protected it. It was a ledger that balanced because nobody got to take more than their share. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't check it right away. She'd learned the world could wait. When she finally looked, it was an email from a recruiter: asterisk opportunity, senior managing director, distressed credit. Competitive comp discretion assured, asterisk. Old life, offering itself like a relapse. Linda deleted it without ceremony. Behind her, June called out from the porch. "You coming or you just gonna stand there like a statue?" Linda turned, smiling a little. "I'm coming." She walked back toward the house, pie cradled like it mattered, because it did. At the porch steps, she paused and looked over the valley. The town was still poor. Still scarred. Still one bad year away from trouble. Linda herself wasn't magically solvent either. She had debt, real debt, not the abstract kind she used to package and sell. But it was debt with a plan, small payments, shared risk, no illusions. And for the first time in her life, she understood the difference between being rich and being secure. Rich had made her alone. Secure, this kind, meant there were people behind you when the numbers turned. She stepped onto the porch and handed the pie to June. June lifted an eyebrow. "Who's that for?" Linda nodded toward the road, where a beat-up sedan had just pulled in, an unfamiliar woman stepping out slowly, wary, holding a child's hand. "A stranger," Linda said. "Looks like they're hungry." June studied her, then the pie, then gave a small, grudging nod. Dorothy May would have liked that. Linda didn't answer with a speech. She just went inside to cut slices. Because in the end, that was the new American dream she could live with. Not climbing alone into a glass tower, but building something warm enough that other people could come in from the cold. At Heart Journal, we don't see this story as a redemption fantasy or a morality tale about good and bad capitalism. We see it as something more uncomfortable and therefore more honest. Linda's journey isn't about rejecting money. It's about learning what money is for. For decades, she lived inside a system that rewarded speed, dominance, and personal upside. A system where silence, about consequences, about communities left behind, was often more profitable than speaking up. When that system collapsed, it didn't just take her status with it. It exposed the harder truth: wealth without connection is fragile, and success without accountability is lonely. What ultimately saves Linda isn't nostalgia or charity. It's structure. Shared ownership. Legal literacy. Patience. The same tools that once helped concentrate power are repurposed to distribute it. The story asks a difficult question many of us avoid. Is the problem money itself, or the way we've been taught to chase it alone? In a culture obsessed with individual wins, the yield of silence suggests a quieter kind of resilience, the kind that grows sideways instead of upward. The kind that doesn't trend easily, doesn't scale cleanly, and can't be reduced to a brand, yet somehow lasts. Before you move on, we'd like to ask you: have you ever won something, status, money, a career, only to realize it cost more than you expected? Have you ever returned to a place, or a version of yourself, that forced you to confront who you became while chasing success? If your own life were stripped down to what truly sustains you, what would still be left? We believe stories matter most when they open space for other stories. If this one resonated with you, we invite you to share your own experience about loss, reinvention, community, or the moment you redefine what success meant to you. You can leave your story in the comments if you're comfortable sharing publicly, or send it privately to the email pinned in the description. With your permission, Heart Journal may adapt selected stories, anonymously, so they can become mirrors and lessons for others walking a similar path. Sometimes the most valuable yield doesn't come from speaking louder, but from finally listening to what silence has been trying to teach us.